now we are recording. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. And I'm going to turn this over briefly to Jamie, who's going to introduce us.
Good morning, everybody. I, as you can tell, don't have a whole lot of a voice, so I'm going to conserve it. But the good news is that you are in fantastic hands. And I'm very excited, first and foremost, to introduce a new person to our team. I've spoken with many of you. I've been at the Community Foundation for about 2.5 years. But Lynn Wrice-Head joined us at the beginning of April. She is our new program associate. She brings decades of experience in this county, particularly on the front lines in program service in terms of serving our homeless population. So we're thrilled to be working, and Lynn and I we've already, I think, made a great team, and we're going to continue to grow that. So I want to turn it over to Lynn for a moment to introduce herself. And then David's going to introduce himself. David's going to cover some of portions of what we might have covered, but you're in great hands. David does teach this on a regular basis. And in addition to his work at Candid, that you may have heard in the past is either Candid or the Foundation Center or even GuideStar. He has experience of being a program officer with the Starker Foundation. So I think we can all trust what he has to say here. He's going to be a wealth of information for us. So thank you, everyone. I'll be in the chat if you have any questions for me, if you want to put them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer. But Lynn, I just want to turn it over to you for a few seconds.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lynn Wrice-Head, and I joined Community Foundation on April 1st. So I'm very new to the job. I'm excited about all the opportunities to interact with each and every one of you. As Jamie stated, I have 20 plus years working as a program director and working with our homeless population in various capacities. So many of you I've worked with and have partnerships with. So really just looking forward to getting to work with you at a different level. And again, I hope that my experience with frontline opportunities can also be of help to each and every one of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. This is me. I'm Dave Holmes. I'm the Network Engagement Manager at Candid. And as Jamie said, you may have known Candid by a lot of different names. Candid 3 years ago was 2 different organizations. It was Foundation Center, which had been around for about 60 years, providing information on philanthropy, the world of philanthropy, and how to get grants and how to write grant proposals. We've been doing that work, and 3 years ago, we partnered with another organization that's been around for about 40 years called GuideStar. GuideStar collects information on nonprofits and makes it available to the public. Generally, it's used by grant makers who are looking to identify potential donors. So at the end of this presentation, I'll tell you a little bit more about the GuideStar part of Candid, because I think that there's something that you might be particularly interested in as we go into future, and it might be something that you want to take advantage of. But just so you know what Candid does, we track where money goes. We get you the information you need to do good. So we collect information on the world of philanthropy, the social sector. We try and give you the information about how things are changing, how to approach different funders, how people deal with COVID, how people deal with the new environment that nonprofits face every year. And we try and make sure that we make that information as clear and understandable as we can. And that's really our goal. So if you do want to reach out to me at any time and find out more about what we do, my email address is in the slides, and it's david.holmes@candid.org. Happy to answer those questions. This particular workshop is a short workshop, it's just about an hour here, and we're going to be talking about applying to the Community Foundation of Lorain County and going through the new application process, underlining some of the things that you need to think about if you are going to be applying directly to the Community Foundation for the upcoming deadlines. And Lynn is going to fill you in with some of the background on that when we get to that point. But in general, what we're going to be focusing on is putting together your proposal to make it the most effective as you can. And some of the things that you're going to need to do are going to be pretty straightforward and pretty much the same as other grant proposals. Now, can we have a show of hands? You can raise them up like this for real, or you can use the little insignia at the bottom and say, how many of you have written grant proposals in the past? Okay, we got a lot of hands going there. That's a good sign. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of a brief review. If you've never done it before, if you were afraid to raise your hand, if you raised your hand and you weren't really telling the truth, any of those things, we'll make sure that you get the information that you need. At Candid, we really focus on what funders want to know. And my experience, I was at the Stocker Foundation. I was also a grant writer and for a consulting firm called Grants Plus for a while. I know a lot of this because I've asked and I've tried to represent it and show what funders really want to know in the grant proposals I've written. And when I've read lots and lots of grant proposals, I really look to see that certain questions are answered. And so I'm going to just do a little brief overall kind of idea about what funders really want to know. And the number one thing, no matter what it is, they want to know about the specific need that you're addressing in the community. And the thing about that is, when you start writing a grant proposal, or if you've done it for the first time for a new program, or even just for the first time for your whole organization, you tend to focus on the things that you need and what your organization needs to get. And we need to hire staff, and we need to get better technology, and we need to do this and that. The thing is, when you're talking to any funder, the number one thing to them is what's going to happen to the people that you're working with, and what benefit are you offering them? So when you talk about the need in the community and you address that part of the grant proposal, and you're talking about your project, the funder is going to be most interested in who gets served, where they are, what their particular situation is, and why they are in specific need directly. And one thing I want to underline also is that it's always a good idea to go a little bit beyond the idea of talking about people as if they were just a problem. And so we support the idea of asset framing when you talk about your need. And I'm going to let Trabian Shorters, who worked with the Skillman Foundation to put this together, I'm going to let him explain what asset framing is. So I'm going to play this short video here.
Asset framing is about not defining people by their challenge, right? So once you recognize that I aspire to be a scientist or a leader, or maybe I just aspire to graduate high school, like I have a goal to be a student, right? Whatever that aspiration is, if you acknowledge that aspiration before you go into my various challenges, you're telling a truer story about me, right? I don't run around believing I'm an at-risk this or a low-income that or a high poverty, high crime. Like, no one carries around those labels thinking that's how I'm going to face the world, right? What people think about is, I want to maybe go to school. I want to maybe someday own a home. I want to maybe possibly get out of this neighborhood or come back to this neighborhood and build. Whatever that person's aspiration is, if you haven't bothered to acknowledge that aspiration before you engage them, then you've made them an object in the sentence. They are a thing to be dealt with, to be moved, to be manipulated. They are not a person. And once you start to engage people as obstacles, once you start engaging people as problems, then recognize that you've now become the problem, right?
I think that's a fantastic summary of the way of thinking that is really not helping. It is labeling. It is telling people that they are underserved. It is labeling. It is making sure that people don't really have a voice in what they're doing. So when we talk about asset framing, we talk about highlighting the aspirations of the people that you are working with and talking about what they are looking to try and do with their lives. So if you are used to saying at-risk youth and using that collective description for the people that you serve, tell me instead, what are these at-risk youth? What are these youth that you serve really interested in? Where are they going? And what do they want to do? That, to me, is talking about the need. And when you talk about the need that way, you concentrate on what you're able to bring to them. So talking about how they need assistance to go to school, they need assistance to make sure that they're able to go to bed not hungry. I mean, they're able to be well fed, they're able to achieve what they're looking to do. That's what you want to concentrate on when you talk about the need. The need also is something that you back up with statistics and information. And particularly when you're thinking about it in terms of talking about the need in Lorain County, it's not enough to just say, well, nationwide, this is what's going on. the Community Foundation and people that are interested in supporting programs in Lorain County want to know what's happening in your neighborhood and what's happening specifically in the county or in the part of the county that you're serving. So when you talk about the people that you're working with and you explain their situations, use statistics that you can draw that specifically. Oops, you're in a loop there. You can mute. Thank you. Yeah, use statistics that talk about that part of the city, that part of the county that you're working with, and don't just imagine that you can do it generally. The other thing to think about is, similar to the asset framing idea, is putting a face on the statistics. Don't just say 15% of people are in this situation and 15% are in poverty and you start talking all statistics, and people don't really see who are the people involved. What do they want? Maybe you could use an example or a quote from somebody that you serve to really show the need clearly. The funders, Community Foundation is going to probably know a lot about what's going on in the county, but you're always going to be educating someone when you write a grant proposal. You're always going to be explaining it to someone who didn't hear about it and doesn't know about it. And, you know, when I worked for the Stocker Foundation, a lot of the people on the trustees and that were making the decisions didn't live in Ohio. They lived in Arizona and New Mexico. So I needed to make it clear what was going on in the community and make it clear to them that there was a need and that's important. This is how the foundation links to you. So that as long as you set up your need very clearly early on, you can then go in to talk about what you're going to try to achieve. And this is something that we encourage you to be very clear about from the beginning. What are you planning to do? What activities you're going to do? And what are the outcomes? And I'm going to talk about outcomes a little bit more in the context of this proposal a little bit later on. But if you're not clear about the difference between an output and an outcome, we're going to make sure that you know that by the end of this training. Because an output is a great thing to be able to say you did, but an outcome is really what you're looking for. And that's the change that you were bringing about in the community. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. The other things that go into a typical grant proposal, your specific strategies for making it happen from beginning to end. One of the places where a lot of people fall down when they're writing a grant proposal is not to talk about the process in a way that makes it real. You may have a fantastic idea, but if I can't see how it's going to work, if you haven't thought about transportation issues and food issues for people that you might be serving, it's going to be obvious to a person who's looked at an awful lot of grant proposals. And you want to make sure that your proposal structures your program in a way that I can see what's going to happen from the beginning of it till the end of it. We also always want to know who you're working with. And this is particularly important to the Community Foundation. It's particularly important to most foundations, but Community Foundation actually asks you to get some support letters from people that you are working with. It's very important to talk about this because nobody really does things alone in the nonprofit world. There's always someone that you're partnering with. There's always someone that you can partner with. You can do a lot of things independently, but you are not doing them independent of the rest of the world. So it's a good idea to talk about who you're working with and not just who you wish you were working with. You know, we hope to work with a local senior center tells me that you don't work with a local senior center right now. I need to know more about who are you partnering with. The other things that are typical for every grant proposal is a way of measuring your success. Specify the objectives you're headed for and develop a way not only to collect the data that proves that you accomplished what you said you were going to do, but it also collects information about how the program is going to go on as it goes on. If you don't get feedback as the program goes on, if you don't monitor the program, you're going to be in a lot of trouble when you get near the end if you haven't checked to make sure that things are happening. First day of the program, the buses don't come, people don't meet up, the things doesn't get done. Do you just leave it there? No, you get the feedback and you're able to make changes to make sure the program works. You need to have that in place before you do the program. Some of the other things that every grant proposal asks for are, why are you the best organization to do this work? If you're an established organization, you can talk about your history. You can talk about what makes you such a fantastic asset to the community. But if you're brand new, sometimes you don't have that history. And so you have to talk more about who are the people involved and why specifically are you the best organization to do this work? What do you do that no one else does? Those are the things that a funder is going to be looking at. They get a lot of applications, many more than they can fund, and they have to make some pretty hard decisions. So knowing why they should invest in you and your program is an incredibly important thing. Some of the last stuff you have to talk about, how are you going to sustain the program? It would be nice if you could go to the Community Foundation and they would pay for everything in your program every year for the rest of eternity. That's not going to happen. So you are going to have to think about who else are you going to be approaching? Who else will you get funding from to do the program this year in the program year that you're talking about? And then in the long run, is this a program that is going to be continual? What's your plan for making it pay for itself in the future? Are you going to charge for it? Are you going to raise money from other sources? Maybe government sources, maybe individuals. Talk about the plan. You don't necessarily know everything about the future. You certainly don't know about the future, but you can know about what your plan is for the future so that that program, if for some reason the Community Foundation supports it one year and then doesn't support it next year, it will continue. It will be supported so that it will be worthy of investment that first year because it's going to be kept on in the future years. So I want to talk about the Community Foundation specifically with those ideas in the back of your mind. And I'm going to put up here, this is the July General Grant Cycle application that we're going to be talking about. The deadline for it is July 1st, so you have a month, almost entire month.
I don't recognize your name.
I'm sorry, we have, you're going to stay muted just for a little bit, thank you. This is-
Well, if Dana phone screened her, she can pull her up. No.
Just mute somebody here. There we go. Yeah. So this is the Community Foundation's outline. And this is some basic intro that's going to be at the beginning of it. And you can see you will contact Missy Timko if you have some technical problems when you log into the system. And then if you have questions about the application itself, the financial statements, Lynn Wrice-Head is going to be the person who's going to be talking. Lynn, can you tell me a little bit more about the process? So when the applications are due July 1st, what happens after that?
Yes. So as David shared, the applications opened on June 1st and they will close on July 1st. So that is our open application period. Then in July and August, the staff will do their due diligence in reviewing your applications and we'll be identifying dates to send materials over to our grants committee. And then September and October, the grants committee will do their due diligence and reading over your applications, compiling any questions that they may have. So during this time, Jamie and I will be sending out emails or phone calls or setting up some Zoom calls to answer any questions that we might have in relation to the grant applications. In November, we will obtain any needed information for our grants and preparing to submit our recommendations to the board. In December, the board will meet to approve the recommendations. Then following that, of course, we'll reach out to the various organizations as far as who was allocated what funds.
All right, thank you, Lynn. And as you can see, this is the beginning of the process. This is where you share the most important information. And then from that point on, it's the Community Foundation that's going to be working with you to get to the point where they're going to make the decision about whether or not you get a grant. So I'm going to go through some of the vital parts of this application. And one thing that I will underline as we get into it is that each of these sections are going to have character limits. And my experience in teaching grant proposals is that those are the hardest things. My recommendation is even download the application or print it out so that you can work on a separate page, because it's easier to answer a question and paste it into the application blank and then find out that you need to edit a few words. It's better to do that and then have some time to do some editing on a separate sheet. And instead of waiting until June 30th at 11:59 p.m. to realize that you put in too many characters and too many words in your application. By the way, this is the link to the People Who Care, the Community Foundation's website. You go to the grants and scholarships section and scroll down. There's a currently accepting applications link to the July community grant. And that's where you want to click apply now, and it will give you a link to the login for the system in order to apply. If you have any trouble with that, Missy Timko is the person that you want to reach out to make sure that you get into the process. But I'm going to underline certain parts, and I'm going to sort of in order in the way that they show up in the application. The numbers may be slightly different than what I have here, but it's important that you take a look at each of these sections and really understand what they mean. And you can see that they refer back to some of the things that we have described. One thing I didn't talk about is this executive summary. This is an overarching description of the project. This, the second sentence here is the one that, to me, that is the most important. Keep in mind, our donors may read the executive summary and not be familiar with your organization. So there's a lot of pages to the grant proposal. There's a lot of elements that you add in, and you may think, well, the executive summary, I'll just do this real quick. Remember that a person who's going to read your grant proposal is going to read it thoroughly. It's going to look at your budget in depth. But when they need to be reminded of what's going on for this project and to get a good idea of it in their minds when they're talking about 40 other projects at the same time, they're going to look at that executive summary. And if it's very sketchy, if it doesn't go through all of the different elements of your grant proposal, it's not going to really tell your story as effectively. So in the executive summary, it includes essentially the essential parts of the rest of the grant proposal. So talk about the overarching goal of the program along with the key activities you're going to be doing, your measurable outcomes and your timeline, who you're going to be working with, the state and national certifications of your organization that make it worthy to do this project. It has a character limit of 10,000, which seems like a lot. 10,000 seems like a lot of everything, but it doesn't turn out to be tremendously a lot when you're getting into typing because all those characters add up quickly. So my recommendation about writing the executive summary is to write it last. Write it when you are done thinking about how the program might change and you're getting it into a solid format. And then when you want to summarize the program in the most essential way, then you write the executive summary and paste it in. That's my recommendation for writing executive summaries. That keeps you from having little mistakes, like you put in your request that you wanted $10,000 and you write your executive summary and you forgot what that was, or you decided you needed more, so you put $12,000, and then the executive summary doesn't balance with the previous stuff. Don't write the executive summary before you're sure about all the rest of the parts. There's also another crucial section early on that is specific about letters of support. And you can see that letters of support, that little asterisk means that is one of the required sections of your grant proposal. So letters of support are from other organizations that refer clients to you or collaborate with you on projects. Meaning if you are doing an intense collaboration, if you're working with another agency and your project depends on that agency in order to make sure that it works, we want to know that that agency is on board with it. And I'm not going to give you specific, do you have specific advice, Jamie or Lynn, about what you like to see in these letters that is from these other agencies? Is there one thing that you like to see, or a couple things?
Well, David, I would say that it speaks to the example that you talked about earlier when you said, you know, we might talk, yes, an applicant might think of, okay, we would like to work with the senior center. This letter of support is really sort of the show us, don't just tell us. You know, we want to know whether it's you're working with a particular organization to make sure that you're working with the Latinx population, whether there's an organization that you're working with to ensure that there's transportation for your participants. This is that opportunity to be able to share that. And I don't think that there's any other particulars other than that, other than let's see that there's a working relationship there.
Right. And make sure that it's file size under 3 megabytes, which should be okay. That should not be a problem. Jamie, by the way, I didn't mean to tax her with this while she's trying to conserve her voice, but keep an eye on the chat because she added in some comments on the executive summary. And I'm sure as we go on, she'll be adding in other comments as they come up so that you make sure that you get the full message from us, from me and from the Community Foundation. Here's a new crucial section that I think is becoming very, very common across the board. Following the murder of George Floyd, there was a definite awareness within the world of philanthropy that things could be improved in terms of service to different populations. And certainly the Community Foundation of Lorain County has always been interested in understanding who in Lorain County is being served. This demographics section is something that you need to give serious thought to. It's not just about, oh, well, I think there's about this many of these people in this group. That's not how they want it to be done. So the Community Foundation is interested in better understanding the demographics of the individuals. If you're applying for general operating support, please provide the demographics of your Lorain County clients overall. But if it's new, estimate the number of Lorain County clients. And you'll notice that Lorain County is mentioned there a lot. And I'm in Cuyahoga County, and I've seen applications from, when I was in Lorain County, applications from out of county organizations. It was difficult sometimes to track exactly who's coming from Lorain County, but it is something that they want to know, and it's necessary for the applications. The other elements in here are details on how you are serving the different demographics. So tell us how you are going to be tracking the demographics of your participants. If you have a program serving youth and they do service projects, tell me about the demographics of the people that are doing the projects, not for the people who attended anything that the project did a service related to. In talking about demographics, you also go into detail about the population that you served, and do the best you can in terms of talking about the population you're going to serve with the grant request. Do you determine client eligibility? Do you use federal poverty guidelines? What threshold do you use? What portion of your clients meet these guidelines? Notice that it's not requiring you to do one of those things. It's saying, tell me how you decide who are the people serving. By the way, I've kind of taken ownership of this. This isn't mine at all. This is the Community Foundation's. But I want to speak from the Community Foundations because I can feel it. This is the kind of detail that when you review a grant proposal is essential when you're trying to convince people that this is really helping the people that they care most about. There's also, yes, go ahead.
David, I'll just add there that that's a change also, that we've included this to be percentages instead of actual numbers in terms of when we're looking at how the population you're serving may identify. And we heard from folks that, they were, looking up they were trying to get to the exact number of something. And while numbers are important to us, we're really wanting to know the spirit of who you're serving. So we've put the percentages in there, please make sure they add up to 100. And for example, if you survey your audience and then you extrapolate from that to come up with your percentages, that's fine. Just let us know in there. There's room in there for commentary. We're looking for the spirit of who you're serving, not the difference, whether it's 5 in this category and 6 in this category.
And if this is something that is new to you in terms of collecting information, I'm going to have a list of resources that might help you with that collection of demographic information. If you've never done it before, or if you haven't organized it before, those might help you out. The thing about this and the thing about getting information on demographics is also to make sure that there is equity in the program delivery. And if you're not sure about the definition of equity in comparison to equality, you're making sure that everyone can participate who is intended to be an audience for this, that you're making it possible for them to get the same type of experience. And that's really what equity is about, is making sure that you are creating something that isn't just favoring one group or another, even subtly, even through program design. So share some strategies related to that. And you see, here's the breakdown of percentages that you're going to be asked about. And again, it should be in estimates of percentages, not down to the counted number, but this is your intention to make sure for this type of demographic spread. Talking about how you're increasing diversity, equity, inclusion with your board and staff is related to that. And I think there's generally a push across the nonprofit world for organizations to speak to this and to say, this is how we are making sure that we're not being centered on just the people who it's easy to reach, just the people who we've always reached in the past. If I knew of an organization that was starting up and I knew that you were delivering a service to a neighborhood, I would want to see a representation of that neighborhood on your board. I would want to see that you are getting input and strong input from people that you are going to be working for the benefit of. So those are some strategies you can think about as you talk about this. I have some resources here that, again, these slides will be shared with you, so you'll be able to get access to them. But GuideStar is part of Candid, and the GuideStar link there is to a resource that is about gathering information on demographics and collecting it and sharing it within your GuideStar profile. But it's essentially the same kind of information we're asking you to share on there. So it's a good guide for that. SurveyMonkey also has a good suggestion if you are gathering specific demographic information from surveys, how to design those. And then there's one there specifically for arts organizations, because arts organizations sometimes have a difficult time with thinking about the broad audiences that they're serving. How do you know that you're reaching lots of different demographics, that you're reaching a broad, diverse population? And that can help you out with that. So hopefully these will help you with some of the collection. But I know that just from what Jamie was saying, I think that there's definitely a respect of the intention of where you're moving toward with your organization. And I think that's important to share. All right. One section that tends to trouble a lot of people is the financial section. And I know in the past there's been very specific guidelines for how the finances were shared for the Community Foundation. That is going to be changed a little bit in this year. And the one change that I know is going to be possible now is a good thing, is that you can upload your budgets in the format used by your organization. You have the option of doing one or the other, as you see by this question. Upload your most current budget in your organization's format, or download and complete the project budget that the Community Foundation is supplying for you. I don't think any preference. I think what I would do if I was doing this is to look at what the Community Foundation's outline shows and make sure that you're not making anything less clear in the budget that you use. If you have a scratched out piece of paper with bunches of handwritten things on them, that's probably not what they want when you upload your budget. It's probably something that explains itself a little bit better. This is my advice about budgets in general, is that when you create a budget and share it, make sure that you explain why everything is there. You can use budget narrative, little footnotes that explain why things are necessary and where you got a calculation. But even in the naming of different things, don't make it something where it says other or extras or contingency. That doesn't tell me specifically what that money is for and how you came to that number. I like to be able to look at a budget and be able to explain the project from it. If you read enough budgets, you can often tell how the project is working because you see all the components of it in the budget. And Jamie is mentioning in the chat, we've eliminated the portion that asks for exact amounts for foundation board giving, individual giving, etc. So when you're talking about the income, you don't have to get nearly as specific as you have in the past. For the organizational budget, so we're talking about the project budget, which is for your specific project, and then there's the overall budget for the organization. They're looking for your profit and loss statement in the format used by your organization, or using a template that the Community Foundation supplies. And to be honest, this is pretty fantastic because oftentimes a funder will not give you any kind of direction about sharing this information, and you may find out too late or that you need to work to get something together. Here's another tip in general for filling out grant proposals, is that read through attachments like this. Read through what you are going to be asked to be providing, because sometimes, it's one thing to look for this at the beginning of June. It's another thing to try and get it together on the last day of June before the application is due. So read through it and make sure if there's something that you need to create, there's something that you need to get from your financial person, that you work ahead and get that as soon as you can. There are guidelines specifically for working with fiscal sponsors. And I think that that's something that if you are working with a fiscal sponsor, you want to make sure that you read through when it indicates that you need to share specific information. Like, for example, with a fiscal sponsor, you will need to upload their 3-year profit and loss statement. So if you're a nonprofit organization that you're working and you're functioning independently, you don't have to worry nearly as much about that. But if you are working with a fiscal sponsor, make sure that you know what's required of you when you apply. If you don't know what a fiscal sponsor is, it's generally a partner that you would have if you are not a nonprofit, or if you're an individual working in partnership with a nonprofit, so that they can be the people who receive the money and then pass it along to you. So there's a lot more data that the Community Foundation needs to make sure that the fiscal sponsorship is clear and will yield a legal grant. This is also about budget, even though it's called something different. I remember I mentioned earlier on, we're talking about sustainability, talking about the plan for future success of the program. Note the specific things that are listed here. The list of committed and pending funding for the project for the fiscal year during which it's going to be conducted. And then also tell me the strategies you have been putting in place to make sure that the program will continue and that you won't run out of money, that you won't run out of supporters, that you won't be too reliant on one source of funding with the uncertainty of the future. Also, if there's a way that grant making, that the Community Foundation could support you with the project, other than a financial way, other than in terms of giving you a donation, they want to know about that. And that's terrific. I would think about that, because Community Foundation has a connection to the Lorain County area that is beyond most nonprofit organizations. They're able to help bring people together, because when they call people and ask them to get together, things tend to happen. And they just have a large staff full of people that are able to collect information on the community that you may not otherwise be able to get. So that's the great thing about working with the Community Foundation and foundations like them, is that you can ask them questions and you can say, I would really like you to help out with further promotion of this. I would really love you to help out when we are how can we make your program run? We want to support it financially, that's great, but we also want to support it so that it gets done the most effective way. And there's just a little tip from Jamie: please be clear when you're naming your financial files so that we know what they are, so that we know who they came from. My advice is always to put the name of your organization and the name of what it is that's attached. Don't just put attachment. Please don't just put attachment. Call it something else. Now, evaluation is a crucial section for a grant proposal, and Jamie is the expert on evaluation, so I'm going to speak to these, but Jamie is the person you want to ask if you run into any issues about this as you put it together. And she makes it very clear in 3 different types of things that you get asked about. They're going to be wanting to know specifically what are the outputs of your program, the outcomes of your program, and the way you measure those. So the definitions are there, and hopefully they are clear to you, but we'll make them as clear as we can. Outputs are tangible and direct results of the program, and that tends to be something that you can count. So it's the number of people in the program. So you served 56 people at this event. 56 people came to it. We were open for 27 hours every week for 10 weeks. That tells me specific things that you did in the program, the things that came out of it. But what it doesn't tell you is what happened to those 56 people. I can't remember how many people I said. What happened to those 56 people that came to the program? How did they change? Did they change in that they learned something? Like that's a short-term kind of thing where after they take this class, maybe it's a CPR class, suddenly they're able to do CPR and they couldn't do that before. That's a change in their knowledge, a change, it's a learning change. Is there a change in their condition? Are they able to now do something that they couldn't do before? With this transportation, they're able to get this medical services that they need. Before that, they couldn't do that. That's a change in condition. Or is there a change in behavior that you're going to be making in that? That's an outcome. These are all things that can be observed and can be measured. The change in behavior, they've gone through your training on risk-taking behavior, and you've surveyed them, and you've found that 30% of them have chosen not to take certain risk-taking behavior. They don't smoke, they don't take drugs, those kind of things. What is the measurable change that you're looking for? That's an outcome. And then measures of success are simply the tools that you use to determine these. So do you do surveys? Do you have focus groups? Is it through observation? Is it through interviews? What is the way that you are going to be keeping track of this? And Jamie has also added in there that she's happy to talk to you about some of these as you put this together. So if you need it before the process, before you start writing it down in final form, you can talk to her. Evaluation, it may be, if you're talking about how you're going to be measuring your success, is it based on evidence? Is there a model or a study that you're using to justify the effectiveness of the program? Where did it come from? Why do you think it's going to work? And then keep track of your outcomes. And I can see the outputs and outcomes section here listed. It tells you about, it gives you those definitions again, and it gives you spaces to share them. If you're uncertain about this, one thing that I recommend, and people look at me funny when I say this, but I recommend creating a logic model for your program all the time, whether or not you have to share it with a funder, and a number of funders do ask for it. But a logic model simply follows the logic of the program, and it tells anyone looking at that how the program works, what changes it makes. So it talks about the inputs that you put in. What do you need? You need money, you need space, you need personnel, you need items. That's all the material that you'll need. And then if you have those, you can do these specific planned activities. You can plan to have a series of trainings. If you accomplish those activities, then you have outputs, things that you have delivered. So we plan to have a series of trainings. We had 12 trainings. That's an output. In those 12 trainings, 12 people completed the CPR trainings, and one of the outcomes, which is the change made, is that we have 12 newly certified CPR experts in the community. What is the impact that's going to be? They're going to keep their organizations safer. They're going to be able to respond to emergency situations. Outcomes lead to an overall impact in the future. If these benefits to the participants are gained, then certain changes in organizations, communities, or systems should be expected to occur. If you teach people how to do something and they learn to do it, the bad thing that could happen if they didn't learn it will happen less. Similarly, if you teach them to make different decisions and different changes, you may keep them out of the juvenile justice system, or out of prison, or out of trouble. And that's a good logic to follow this. One other thing that I want to underline here is we think about the inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes as making a pie. Your inputs are planning and preparing the ingredients and utensils. Activities are mixing and baking. You make a delicious pie, but that's not an outcome. The outcome of a delicious pie is that people eat it and are full and happy. It's the simplest way to understand this logic model. With programs, you have the planning and preparing, the money and staff and resources. You plan activities, you deliver mentoring programs. The output is the girls graduate from the mentorship program. And they learn skills and they learn how to deal with life from that mentorship program. And the outcome, the change in the community, is that girls from the program become successful and happy, healthy adults. So if you do have questions about this, there's a nice little example here about the Lorain County Safe Harbor Genesis House. One output they had is 9 gatherings for 189 participants, and that had a specific outcome. It increased the social support for the participants. They feel closer to Genesis House. They provide participants with opportunities to serve as social supports for one another as they move from an abusive relationship. That's a definite change in their condition. And you measured this, Genesis House measured this by asking their feeling of connectedness. They have one-to-one conversations with them. They have group chats and feedback through the Aftercare Facebook group and formal surveys. It's a clear way of showing that you didn't just do something, that something made a difference in the community. And that's what you want to communicate. So that's an overview of some of the more difficult parts of the grant proposal, but I may have missed a question that puzzles you, or you have a question about formatting or something like that. So where can you get help? Melissa Timko will help you with the process of the online grant application, entering the data and using the online grant application, getting your usernames to work, what file format, why can't I get this file to attach? That's the kind of thing you want to reach out to Missy Timko about. Lynn is going to be answering your questions about the project and answering the specific questions in the application. So if one of those questions that I went over with you gives you trouble, or one of the other questions, reach out to Lynn. There's her email address right there. And finally, if you have a question about putting that evaluation together in a way that really talks about how you're changing the condition of the individuals you work with, changing their lives, you can reach out to Jamie and she'll be able to answer questions related to this. You can also get help from us. Candid, I have my own email address. So if you have a question about the process, or you just want some advice about a particular thing, you're putting a budget together, I can't do it for you. I can't read all your grant proposals, but I can certainly give you suggestions and resources that will help you out. You can also get help in Lorain from a couple of our partners. We have what's called a funding information network. It's all across the country, and it has partners in different libraries and nonprofit centers throughout the country. 2 of them are in Lorain County. The Lorain Public Main Library down in Lorain is a partner of ours. They have our training materials. They have access to our foundation directory. One of the things that you're trying to do is find out who else might give you a grant for your program. You can go to Lorain Public or North Ridgeville branch, and you can get assistance with searching our foundation directory and using that to find other potential sources of funding. And there are staff at each of those locations that have been trained in using our materials and that can share that with you. The other thing I want to tell you about, just briefly here at the end, is that all this material that you're gathering together for your grant proposal, the data that you use, you can share it on guidestar.org. Candid profiles are what we call the GuideStar profile of your organization. And if you're a 501c3 in the United States, I'll tell you for certain that you are in GuideStar, even if you don't know it. You might want to go to guidestar.org and type in the name of your organization and read what it says about you on there. The reason I know this is because it's drawn from the IRS records. So if you have good standing with the IRS, you're going to be listed on GuideStar. The other thing that's possible on GuideStar is that you don't have to just have that information that's automatically put in there. You can update it yourself to really show who you are. And the way we talk about doing this, by the way, this is totally free. If you go to GuideStar and you say, I want to update my profile, you'll be given the opportunity to claim your profile as a member of that organization's staff. And then you can make changes to the organization's listings. You can change them by adding information and earning what's called seals of transparency. Seals of transparency enable you to share at the first level with bronze transparency. It's just simply your contact information. How do people get a hold of you? Who's the main contact for the organization? If you verify that information, you get a little bronze seal and it shows up on your profile. If you add any more information, program information, such as you would share in a grant proposal, financial details, such as you would share in a grant proposal, and or the ways of measurement and your impact, that will earn you different levels of seals of transparency. The first two, bronze and silver, take less than an hour to earn. It's something, bronze transparency takes about 5 minutes. It's really not that difficult to earn these. And the reason why you would earn them is that so many people use GuideStar to determine who they're going to give to. When you go to Facebook and you do a Facebook fundraiser, they pull that information from GuideStar. So if you want somebody in your organization to do a Facebook fundraiser, you want to have the real detailed information on your organization so other people who don't know you will get excited about giving to you. If you do something through Amazon Smile, where a portion of your purchases at Amazon goes to your organization, they pull that information from GuideStar. The other places that do are donor advised funds, or DAFs. So Vanguard and Fidelity and Schwab, those are investment companies that take money from individuals and they invest it and they give to charity in the name of those individuals. And they decide who to give to by researching using what's called GuideStar Pro, a tool that they use to go through. And the organizations that show up most clearly on GuideStar Pro are ones that have seals of transparency. I tell you all this because we also have a special thing that's going on this year that is free. Again, it's totally free if you want to do it. If you're less than $1 million in annual revenue and you earn a gold seal by going onto guidestar.org, claiming your profile and updating it to get a gold seal of transparency, you can get a free 1-year subscription to our foundation directory, the basic version. That's something that costs $60 a month if you want to get it from home or from your office. But you would get it for free for a year if you update your seal. And they tell me that this is something that's going to be ongoing, so that when you get a seal in 2023, you may have the same benefit. So I encourage you to do this. It's totally free. You can learn more about it at the little bit.ly link that's down there below. But the place that I would go if I wanted to learn most about all these different things is to help.guidestar.org. And Laura Malone, thank you so much for contributing that, Laura. I've learned from other interactions from nonprofits, they've been rare instances, they've had surprise donations coming solely because of the organization's platinum transparency. She also recently heard from a Lorain County organization that they lost funding opportunity because their GuideStar record just wasn't transparent enough. That is really significant, Laura. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you all today for joining me. I'm going to ask if there are any additional questions. You can put them in chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can ask those questions. And if I can't answer them, we do have quite a number of the staff online here that can help you. So I'll just pause and see if there are any questions.
Dave, while we're waiting for questions, I wanted to make an announcement and invite everyone on the call.
Sure.
I would like to invite everybody on the call to Community Foundation's annual meeting. This will be my first experience. I'm excited about it as well. The meeting is on June 15th, 2022, from 11 to 1 at the Lyria Performing Arts Center. We will celebrate educators and nonprofit organizations who positively impacting Lorain County's youth. So the address is 600 West Avenue, Elyria, Ohio, 44035. At 11 a.m., the Youth and Education Celebration will be followed by food and beverage. At 12 p.m., the annual meeting will begin. Also, dessert will follow that meeting. So please please know that you are invited, and we hope to see you there.
Okay, and that is at the Elyria Public Arts Center, is that right?
The Elyria School Performing Arts Center.
School of Performing Arts Center. I'm putting this in the chat.
Excuse me, Lynn, do you have to pre-register for that event?
If you go onto our website, oh, I'm sorry, somebody else is saying annual meeting. Oh,
Well, I was posting it.
if you go onto Community Foundation's website under events, there is a link that you can access that information.
Terrific. A couple of questions. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit if you are a nonprofit requesting general operating funding. There's a limited amount of space related to outcomes and outputs for organizations that have multiple programs and projects. Can you provide any insight into where you would like to see that focus for general operating?
Lynn, do you want to respond to that? Is there?
I'm sorry, I was writing. Repeat the last part.
Just, I wondered if you could elaborate a little bit, if you're a nonprofit requesting general operating funds, the section in the proposal that requests outputs and outcomes is a little bit limited. If you're an organization that has multiple programs, do you have any advice about where you might focus our energy in the proposal if we are requesting general operating funding?
So since I'm new to that, I would think in the general areas, but I'm going to ask Missy for her help because she would be a little more knowledgeable as I'm still learning the process.
I would tend to say, as far as the outputs and outcomes, that you should focus those in your main program areas or where the dollars will primarily be spent. I don't know if that kind of makes sense. I don't know, Jamie, if you have anything to add.
I think Jamie is.
Yeah, I was going to add, Jamie did have to leave, but we would be delighted to continue to talk about the evaluation piece, and in particular, with the question at hand, there might be specifics from that organization that Jamie could address. So happy to follow up accordingly. And I did not want to jump in, but again, appreciate the question.
Okay, thank you.
And two other questions. Catherine, you have a question?
Yeah, so sometimes those character limits are very precarious. Even though you do the word count, it is not by, word count, it characterizes it differently. So do you have any advice on that? That has been here. We think we have the appropriate limit. We put it in, we're still like 1,000 over. So any advice on that component?
Missy, do you want to speak to that or do you want me to?
Sure. The first thing I want to say is that if there's a character field that, has 10,000 characters, don't feel you have to use all 10,000 characters. That's the number one thing. If you can answer something in, a short paragraph or a few sentences, by all means, you're welcome to do so. You don't have to just fill up all of the space. If you get really hung up and you're not able to, edit some things down and you're still stuck, just call us and let us know, and we can up that character limit for you and adjust that for you so you can move forward.
Wow, that is a superpower, Missy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know it's challenging. Some people are very concise writers and others are very flowery writers. So we try to put our word limits in a happy medium.
Just know, Catherine, that not everybody's going to be this flexible. It's, you just be prepared to, the phrase is kill your darlings. Sometimes you have to lose that sentence that you love so much, but if it doesn't.
I will say, we'll take it, from 10,000 to 11. We might not up it to 20.
And I'll be honest, we've had a lot of retirements in our area, and the two main writers have retired. And so I think you'll see a difference in how our writing is. So we will work very hard at trying to be concise and do things like that. But I do know that's been a precarious thing in the past. So just wanted to find out. So thank you so much.
Liz, you have a question as well. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for streamlining some areas. We had a bad start to our day with our phones and our printers not working. And then to come to this and find out what has been streamlined, you made my day and probably my year. So thank you. So follow up to that, with the option now to upload our own organizational budget. I hear you about, I guess, kind of adjusting it to answer questions, maybe add in narrative sections that will answer those questions. I did see that if we went with the template, it would ask for 2 years. Would you recommend if we're uploading our own budget, we adjust for that length of time as well?
Missy, do you think so? Or Cindy, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I would say do a 2-year budget if you're able.
Okay, thank you so much.
But Liz, if the question is that your format today has a 3-year, I would upload what you have and not feel like you have to recreate something. And again, back to your question about streamlining, that was and will continue to be our intent. So
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all for joining today. And there will be a recording that will be sent out and a follow-up coming from Lynn that will have the details on what you need to know. And if you missed anything, you can review it. The recording probably will also have the chat in there. So if you missed anything in the chat, but do pay attention to the annual meeting coming up on June 15th. And the deadline for this is again, July 1st. So good luck to all of you out there. And
David, thank you so much for joining us, David. We just always appreciate your insight. So very helpful.
Thanks for having
me. And we
me.
love the feedback. So please make sure, cards, letters, any questions.
Great. Thank you. Well, we'll see you all. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Be well. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.